This video is brought to you by Blessed Be God Boutique, maker of Catholic fashionable apparel, handmade accessories, and more. When we talk about things in this sort of online Catholic sphere, the outside world rarely takes notice. After all, who cares about people inside of a religion that you're not part of talking shop and talking about their own internal problems if you're not part of that community? Why would you care? I honestly don't have that big of a concern about what it is that Lutherans talk about in their own internal problems, and why should people who aren't Catholics pay attention to what's going on in the Catholic Church? That at least would make sense if you don't take things from a spiritual warfare, supernatural perspective. The outside world takes a very keen interest in what goes on in the Catholic Church, often trying to direct things that goes on in the Catholic Church. And when things happen inside that they don't like, they do everything in their power to discredit what the church does and what the church's standing in the world is. We saw this on full display in 2003 in that Boston story where all of a sudden the Ted McCarrick problem, as we like to call it, priests who were the spiritual sons of Ted McCarrick, were being outed in the secular media, even though Catholics knew, and frankly the secular world already knew for at least a decade beforehand, that the church had a problem with men like James Martin suddenly delving into the fullest evil and depravity of their inclinations and becoming men like Ted McCarrick. The world knew but chose not to really say much about it, but even then you were seeing the decline in mass attendance and people leaving the church over that issue. And then it all came to a head in that fateful day in 2003 when the newspapers in Boston broke the story for everybody to see. This kind of bad press can be detrimental to the church. And they don't need people like us talking about it to make hay out of this, because I have a story for you now of a priest who was essentially a con man. He was a priest, an actual priest, confirmed to have been received holy orders, the whole 9 yards. And for whatever reason, he was compelled to enrich himself at the expense of the faithful. And I don't mean by, trying to write books that have questionable theology and getting rich off of them. No, I mean in the classic, you could make a movie out of this, and unfortunately someone probably is going to, sort of way. And the secular media already got a hold of this story after only really one Catholic news outlet was reporting on this, and I don't think they got the story from them. So we go to the Pillar with the headline, "Catch Him If You Can. Capuchin Arrested After Complex False Identity Scam." You hear a story of a priest using his identity as a priest, but with the full knowledge that oftentimes, very oftentimes, priests have a background in some other secular job or expertise, many of them bringing that expertise into the priesthood to help with their ministry. Plenty of examples of this abound throughout history. An example might be that for contemporarily, that Father Chad Ripperger, in addition to being an exorcist, is also a trained psychologist, which helps him in discerning what is something that requires the expertise of an exorcist versus the situations where it's merely a mental health issue that can be then given to the proper authorities to dealt with, preferably Catholic ones, who could still help the person in their needs. We see this all the time. It's not that unusual. I'm sure if you were to ask around in your diocese or ask your parish priest if he knows any priests who, in addition to being a priest, have expertise outside of that, he could probably tell you. We have this priest in this story use that kind of existing expertise among the clergy to enrich himself. And the secular media has picked up on this. It only took a few days after the story broke from Catholic media. So we turn to the Pillar for the details. Quote, "After Father Powell Balecki, 48, was arrested August 17th, the Capuchin province of St. Mary said it had reported suspicious behavior to federal prosecutors and was not involved in his scheme to defraud U.S. Catholics out of close to $1 million. The Capuchin Franciscan friars are a worldwide order of Catholic priests and brothers, and we firmly believe that no one should violate the public trust, first and foremost a member of the Church. This is why our province reported Father Paul's suspicious behavior to the U.S. Attorney's Office and is continuing to fully cooperate with them," the province said in a statement sent to the Pillar August 21st. According to charging documents filed in federal court, Bilecki spent nearly a decade presenting himself as a physician and sometimes as a member of 2 European royal families in order to raise money for non-existent medical clinics he claimed to operate in war-torn Lebanon. Prosecutors say that beginning in 2015, Bilecki, who used several aliases, quote, executed a scheme to defraud victims by falsely representing that he was a medical doctor who runs medical clinics in Beirut, Lebanon, in order to fraudulently obtain donations from victims. Because many of those donations, amounting to more than $650,000, were sent through the mail, the priest is facing the prospect of federal prison time for the crime of mail fraud. Prosecutors say that the priest also used crowdfunding websites to obtain donations and appeared on several radio shows presenting himself as either a priest or physician and claiming direct lineage to the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha and Sonderburg-Luxemburg royal families. In some cases, the priest appeared in New York area radio shows while pretending that he was calling from Lebanese medical clinics, but was actually calling from the New York area. Prosecutors also claim that the priest had faked several prestigious academic and medical degrees, even apparently convincing his religious province that he completed medical school as a friar, which was not true. Members of the Capuchin province have told the Pillar in recent days that they believed Bilecki was actually a physician until the extent of his fraud was revealed. End quote. One has to wonder how he pulled that off against his religious order. After all, anybody who's ever even spent any real time discerning the priesthood and began working with their diocese or religious order knows that the religious order or the diocese tends to look into your background. They tend to verify little details like your education, the amount of debt from your education that you have, any expertise you might have. They tend to go and verify things. So how he pulled that off on the Capuchins is a mystery to me, having gone through that process myself, or began it anyway many years ago. But this is one of those kinds of stories that the church in America doesn't exactly need right now, which is why that it's kind of annoying that the secular media has started publishing articles about this past weekend. For example, this headline from the New York Post. New York con man cleric Father Paul used $650,000 in phony charity donations to fund lavish lifestyle plastic surgery, according to the feds. And the New York Post has a way of sensationalizing their headlines, but they do so, and the content of their articles reflects it. It doesn't help because the New York Post is one of the biggest quasi-conservative leaning newspapers in the country. Sometimes people take the content seriously, even if their headlines kind of raise an eyebrow or two. Or how about this one from the Daily Mail from the other side of the aisle, published on this same day. Catholic cleric con man used $650,000 in donations for plastic surgery and trips to the Hamptons. Again, the church in America doesn't need this right now. And because the Daily Mail is a UK outlet, guess what that means? Now the story is international in scope. Thanks, Father Bilecki. Greatly appreciated. Now, I would hope that every single person watching this will pray for the priest in this story. And even though I just made a quip thanking him for his disservice to the church, we should also remember to presume that until they lay out all the evidence and that he goes through the processes, that he is innocent until proven guilty. It's very hard these days because anything said of a priest, because of the McCarrick problem going back to 2003 and frankly before it, people tend not to trust them. People tend to just, in their heart, convict them before they have actually had their day in court. It's an unfortunate thing. And the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court is actually a Catholic principle. That's where the secular world got it from. So let's actually try to remember that. I'm curious what you have to say about this, so let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.